What would life look like if you married everyone in The Sims 4? Well, today I'll be finding out as I marry single Sims to find the perfect husband. But with every wedding, there will be a wheel spin, causing chaos, heartbreak, or even scandals. So let's find out if I'll have my dream wedding or be left standing at the altar. Love was in the air for Laila Moon as she married her first husband, Jing Fen, but disaster soon took hold at the reception when her beloved suddenly died of unknown causes. Right on cue, the Grim Reaper made an appearance, ready to do his job, but with the strange circumstances surrounding the death, Grim decided to stick around, making conversation with Laila, and to her surprise, comforting her. Grim found himself filling in the role of absent husband, cooking for Laila and keeping her company while she mourned the loss of Jing. And before you knew it, a bond had formed between the two. And as time flew by, Jing became a distant memory while Grim became her new boo. The deal was sealed with a proposal confirming Laila's grief-ridden days were finally over. So now we have our first wedding and a box to choose from. So I'm gonna pick box number 1 and we have a Bridgerton themed wedding with an unlimited budget. Let's see how this turns out. The big day is finally here, a Bridgerton themed wedding between Laila and the Grim Reaper. And as the guests got settled and the ceremony began, I couldn't help but wonder why Grim would want to settle down with Laila. He takes lives for a living. Still, the bride and groom are happy, so I think it's a perfect time to spin the wheel to see the outcome of this marriage. And for our first wheel spin, Grim and Laila are going to have a happy marriage. Or are they? We all know nothing is that simple in The Sims. Married life for our lovebirds started off cute and romantic, with many memories being made. However, Grim's job was starting to cause friction at home. The late nights out and random disappearances were starting to become an issue, and every time Laila brought it up, Grim headed straight back out to do his job once again. This happy marriage was starting to show cracks, leaving Laila wondering if Jing would have ever been as bad as Grim if he never died. But when Grim didn't come home and days turned into weeks, she knew her marriage was over and it was time to go back into the dating scene, making this her second failed marriage. To Laila's disappointment, every date she went on was a huge failure. The quality of men were either jobless, lacking ambition, or just plain weird. Feeling defeated, she headed to Mount Corambi for a spa day and found herself in the presence of Marvin Bannister, who smooth talked his way into Laila's heart and onto a date. As she hyped herself up in the mirror, I wondered if Marvin would be worthy of our time or if this would just be another failed romance. The date with Marvin was going amazing. The drinks were flowing and Laila didn't need to force the conversation. Everything just came naturally. I felt at ease as I saw how good things were going for the pair. This might just be wedding number 2 in the works. Back at home, all that was on Laila's mind was Marvin, and as they chatted away on the phone, a blast from the past left things looking a bit uncertain. Why would Grim do this after months of nothing? Has he really been out working this whole time? Despite Grim's unexpected phone call, Marvin surprised her with a visit, and once again, just like Jing, Grim became a distant memory, until he turned up at her doorstep, that is. Their irreconcilable differences soon resulted in a divorce, allowing Laila to move things forward and for Marvin to pop the question, locking in wedding number 2. It's time to open a box again, and I'm going for box number 5, which is a Bohemian theme with a 50k budget. It's time for wedding number 2, and this Bohemian theme is ready for Laila and Marvin to tie the knot. Let's hope our happy couple have a better marriage than the last one. So what's it gonna be, Will? It looks like the Will is going for divorce. No, it's gonna be a death. Marriage number 2 is gonna end in a death. While the guests enjoyed the reception and free food and drinks, I found Laila passed out on the ground from exhaustion. These whirlwind romances are tiring her out. Once the party was over, Laila was ready to call it a night, but Marvin had other plans. There would be no sleep tonight because our newlyweds had a plane to catch, heading for a surprise honeymoon in Selva Dorada. Laila was over the moon when they arrived at their destination. The villa was beautiful, the temperature perfect, and all she could think about was having drinks by the pool with her new husband. This marriage was off to a great start, but I soon realized I spoke too soon, when a casual couple's swim turned into an unexpected drowning. Wait, he really just drowned and disappeared? No Grim, no urn, nothing. And look at Laila, she's still swimming and crying. This is crazy. Once Laila was out of the pool, I found her in the bathroom trying to console herself. I'm starting to think that she is the problem and has bad luck following her, but the will did say this needed to end in a death. This is bittersweet. Laila began to drown her sorrows at a local bar. How could she go from being happily married to a widow in a matter of seconds? Sharing her misery with the bartender, she received the best advice she had heard in a while. And with that inspired action, she listened and headed back to the villa to wait for her best friend to arrive and comfort her. Having support around her gave Laila some clarity, and as she talked to the shaman who had been invited for a cleansing ceremony, she realized maybe things weren't so bad after all. Maybe she could go to university and fulfill her dream of becoming a teacher. Just maybe. And with a maybe and some hope in her heart, she submitted her application and was off to Bridgerton. The last thing Laila thought she would be doing is studying with 3 failed marriages under her belt. But surprisingly, she easily adjusted to studying. And before she knew it, she was falling head over heels with one of her peers. But with the failed relationships of the past at the front of her mind, she did everything she could to stay focused on her studies, putting love and marriage on the back burner. However, this approach didn't reflect in her grades no matter how hard she tried. Laila just wasn't book smart. If the distractions on campus weren't enough, ones off campus started to pop up in the form of the shaman from Salvadorada. Laila soon found herself on daily video calls with Glenn and heading to campus games together. Glenn was a fresh breath of air for Laila, and she finally started to feel good about life again. And a harmless visit to her campus turned into a night of drinks and beer pong, and Laila unable to walk straight, passing out in the middle of the pub. A hungover Laila struggled to get back to her studies, and again later that night found herself back with Glenn, but this time they were committing crimes on campus. Luckily enough, they didn't get caught, but Laila was throwing her life away. Thankfully, with exams coming up, she reeled in her reckless behavior just in time and got back to studying and campus activities. But before she knew it, it was already results day. Unsurprisingly, Laila was failing at uni, putting her on probation. If she didn't get it together, she would lose her place at Bridgerton. But instead of getting back to her studies, she called things off with Glenn and gave Ryo all of her attention, letting her grades slip away and a marriage soon be on the horizon. Laila thought if she couldn't follow her dreams, then she could at least be with someone who had ambition like her. So with this marriage in the works, it's time to open box number 4 for our university wedding. We will have a goth theme with a budget of 5k. As the wedding began, I was a little disappointed in Laila. She's thrown away all her potential, but perhaps this marriage will help her get more focused. All Ryo does is study. What kind of distraction could he really be? Now that Laila and Ryo are married, let's spin this wheel and see how this marriage will go. And it's gonna be a divorce. Damn. As the semester continued, Laila gave her studies one last chance, never missing a class or an assignment. But sadly, it made no difference as her grades had declined even further, causing her to be officially kicked out of Bridgerton. Laila's blood was boiling, and the only person she could think to blame was Ryo. A heated argument broke out between the pair before she packed her bag and left. Jobless and homeless, Laila had lost it all, but she was determined to not give up just yet. She got a last-minute job cleaning at the local hospital, called things off with Glenn, and before she knew it, it was almost Laila's birthday. Now in typical Laila fashion, now that she was somewhat in control of her life, again, she began to go out and meet new people. One of them was Kiyoshi. Now Kiyoshi and Laila met at Bridgerton, but never really got the chance to hang out, and through their mutual love of karaoke, the sparks were flying. It wasn't long before Kiyoshi was seen regularly at Laila's apartment, and their solid friendship progressed from pizza dates and sleepovers to the next level. The night before Laila's birthday, Kiyoshi decorated her whole apartment, ready to throw her a surprise party, and the birthday girl had never felt more loved than ever. As the party guests filled her apartment, Laila arrived and had mixed feelings, especially when she saw her ex-husband was invited. She could feel the malice from him as he danced with intent, but she kept her cool, checking her latest batch of birthday wishes. And then her new boo took to the floor with a proposal Laila would never forget. While the guests celebrate, let's open box number 2 because Laila and Kiyoshi are having a traditional wedding with a 10k budget. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to wedding number 4, our traditional theme for Laila and Kiyoshi. Our bride is ready to say her vows, and just look at that ring. Impressive, Kiyoshi. Speaking of Kiyoshi, when he arrived at the altar to start their new forever, it looked like he'd skipped out on the most crucial part of the day, his hygiene. and Laila could only hold her breath for so long. But as the fireworks began, she finally felt relieved as she watched along with the guests. She would be having words with him later about embarrassing her like this. But I want to know how this marriage is going to go, so it's time to spin the wheel once again. And the future of this marriage is a cheating scandal. I wonder who it will be, Laila or Kiyoshi. Life was going amazing for Laila and her husband. He loved her, she managed to get a job at the local school, and Kiyoshi was doing well with his studies at Bridgerton. However, behind closed doors, the two weren't even sleeping in the same bed, and Laila often wondered why. But little did she know that between his studies on campus, he was getting a little too familiar with some of the girls. The main one being the one and only Lilith Pleasant. While Laila worked from home, Kiyoshi used needing help with his assignments to get closer to Lilith. And anytime he came home, Laila was clueless. That is until she got a very strange text from her ex-husband. She wasn't doing the cheating. Was this meant to be a warning from him? She couldn't get the text off of her mind, but she didn't want to confront Kiyoshi without any proof or evidence. So she left it alone and got on with things, acting as if everything was normal. Until that is the next day. Laila was horrified. Raya was right about the cheating, and Kiyoshi was the guilty one doing it. She couldn't think straight. All she could see was red and wanted nothing more than for the pair of them to be as far away from her as possible, sending Kiyoshi to his parents' house. Things had been intense for Laila, and it was as though everywhere she went, Kiyoshi was there too. She couldn't even work out in peace. Seeing him still flirting his way through town was the final straw for her, and after an outburst to Summer, Laila was left embarrassed and knew there was no saving this marriage. It was time for her to pack her things and move to a new city. In Brindleton Bay, Laila felt a sense of peace. Nobody knew her here, and she could have a fresh start, but she wondered if she had been more patient with Grim, would they still be married? If she hadn't pushed Marvin to swim, would he still be here? Out of all of these failed marriages, would any of them had made her happy? And was there an opportunity for a second chance? Laila soon found herself on the phone to Grim, wondering if he still hated her, and she swiftly got her answer. After exhausting all options, she settled on her final decision as life passed her by, picking someone that she least expected. This would be her final husband, the man she would finally have a child with. Who was it? Laila Moon had set her eyes on Glenn, and as they caught up on lost time, Laila realized that it should have been him she married instead of Ryo. Life with Glenn just worked. It made sense. They had dreams together and they had fun together. She felt like she was about to be married again for the first time, and it wasn't long until wedding number 5 was locked in. So let's open our final box, and our wedding will be a tropical theme with no budget. Oh gosh, let's try and figure this one out. Our final wedding is at home. There was no budget, so we had to haggle some second-hand decorations to make this work. But we finally made it to our last wedding, and I hope for Laila's sake that this one lasts. We've had 5 weddings, 5 marriages, and none of them have been a success. But this one must be, because this is the man that Laila is going to have her children with. Which, speaking of, I think Miss Laila is pregnant. Laila and Glenn are having a baby. This means that Laila finally got her happy ever after. Who would have thought that Glenn would be the one? Laila was so excited and happy to tell Glenn, and thankfully he was happy too. That means I completed this challenge. We've given Laila the marriage and the wedding that she wanted. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a like and subscribe, and hopefully this marriage will last.